The forest was quiet when the human stepped out from the broken escape pod. His boots sank into the soft ground, and his breath came out in heavy clouds of steam. He looked around, scanning the strange purple trees and glowing flowers. He had no idea where he was. His ship had been shot down, and he was the only one who survived. The air was heavy, but it was safe to breathe. He wiped the blood from his forehead and moved forward, not knowing that eyes were already watching him from the shadows. Hidden behind the tall roots of a crystal tree, a group of alien girls watched with wide eyes. They had never seen a creature like him before. His body was different from anything in their world. Thick muscles under torn fabric, strange colored skin, and scars running across his arms and chest. One of the girls whispered to the others, her voice trembling. "Is that a human?" The word itself felt forbidden. They had been told stories of humans since childhood, stories of wild beasts that looked like them but carried the strength of predators. The human kept walking, his steps heavy but steady. He carried no weapon, only a piece of metal he had pulled from the wreckage. Still, to the alien girls, the way he moved felt dangerous, as if every muscle was ready for battle. One of them gasped softly when he turned his head, and for a moment his eyes locked with theirs. The girls froze, their hearts racing. His eyes were sharp, intense, filled with something they had never seen before, pain and fire. He collapsed onto a rock, his chest rising and falling fast. He pulled at the torn cloth of his sleeve, revealing a deep cut. The girls stared at the red liquid dripping down his skin. They had seen wounds before, but never blood like this. It was bright, almost glowing in the strange light of the forest. The youngest of the girls covered her mouth to hide a scream. "He bleeds like fire," she whispered. The human tore a piece of his shirt and pressed it against the wound. His hands were rough, steady, used to pain. Every move he made shocked the watchers. They expected him to cry out or fall unconscious, but instead he gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand again. That defiance made the alien girls whisper louder. They had seen warriors of their kind faint from smaller injuries, yet this strange being refused to fall. Curiosity began to fight against fear. One girl, taller than the rest, leaned forward. Her silver eyes studied the shape of his shoulders, the strange thickness of his legs. "How can a body be like that?" she muttered. Her friend tugged at her arm in warning. "Do not speak. Elders say humans are cursed. Their bodies are not natural." But even as she said the words, her own gaze did not leave him. The human stumbled toward the glowing river nearby. He knelt and splashed water on his face, letting the cool liquid wash away some of the blood and dirt. The alien girls could not look away. His reflection in the river rippled, his face tired but alive. One of the girls whispered, almost to herself, "He looks like us, but stronger. Why does he look so strong?" Suddenly a branch cracked under his boot, echoing across the forest. The alien girls jumped in fright. The human turned his head sharply, scanning the trees. His eyes narrowed as if he could feel their presence. He stood still, listening to the silence. For a long moment, no one moved. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The girls clutched each other's hands, certain he would discover them. Then, after what felt like forever, he looked away and kept walking. The girls exhaled at once, their whispers turning into excited gasps. They argued in hushed voices. "We must tell the elders," one said. "No, if they know, they will kill him," another replied. Their fear of punishment battled with the strange pull of curiosity. What if the stories were wrong? What if humans were not monsters, but something else? The human reached the edge of a wide clearing. The moonlight shone on his figure, making his scars glisten like silver lines. His chest rose and fell, his breathing rough but steady. From the shadows, the alien girls stared as if under a spell. Every detail of him, the cut on his cheek, the shape of his hands, the way he stood despite his wounds, burned into their minds. None of them had ever seen such a body, and it left them speechless. The tallest girl pressed a hand against her heart. She could not understand why it beat so fast. The stories said humans were dangerous, but her body reacted in a way she had never felt before. Fear mixed with something else she could not name. Her whisper was soft, almost trembling. "He is not like the stories." The human raised his head to the sky, staring at the unfamiliar stars. His lips moved, but no one could hear what he said. A prayer, a curse, or maybe a promise. Whatever it was, the sound of his voice carried across the clearing, deep and strong. The alien girls shivered, their skin crawling with a strange energy. For the first time in their lives, they felt small, fragile, standing before something their people had always warned them about. The human finally sat down by the fire he made from broken branches. His body glowed in the orange light, every scar and muscle sharp against the dark night. The alien girls stayed hidden, unable to leave. Their eyes were wide, their whispers soft, their hearts caught between fear and wonder. They had seen something impossible, something that would change their lives forever. They had seen a human body, and it was nothing like they imagined. The night air was heavy, but the whispers of the alien girls were heavier. They crouched behind the roots of the crystal trees, their glowing eyes never leaving the human by the fire. The crackle of burning branches lit up his face, shadows dancing across his skin. They had never stayed this close to a being they were told to fear, yet none of them could turn away. Their voices were low, urgent, as if speaking too loudly would summon something terrible. One girl pressed her hand over her mouth. "His skin, it is marked," she whispered, remembering the scars on his arms. "Why does he not hide them? Why does he wear them like decoration?" Another shook her head. "They are not decoration. Those are battles. He has survived more pain than we can imagine." The youngest trembled. "That is why the elders call them cursed. To suffer and live, that is not natural." Yet, despite her fear, her eyes were wide with fascination. The human leaned forward, feeding more wood into the fire. The light revealed the raw wound on his arm, still bleeding through the cloth he had tied. He didn't cry, didn't even flinch. He simply pressed his hand tighter against it and carried on. The girls gasped softly, for among their kind, even a shallow cut brought tears and weakness. Here was a creature who bled openly, yet sat calmly by a fire, as though pain was only a shadow. One of the braver girls leaned closer, her breath quickening. "Look at his eyes," she whispered. The others followed her gaze. His eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, sharp and alive, watching the darkness as though he could see through it. The girl shivered. "Those are not the eyes of prey. Those are the eyes of a hunter." The word sent a chill through the group, and several of them clutched at each other's hands. A sudden howl echoed in the distance, the call of a night beast. The alien girls stiffened, their hearts pounding in fear. Normally, such a sound sent them fleeing back to the safety of their walls, but the human didn't move. Instead, he stood slowly, his back straight, his head lifting toward the sound. The firelight caught his face, making his expression sharp and unreadable. He looked not like prey waiting to be hunted, but like a predator waiting for a fight. The girls could not understand it. "Why does he not run?" one asked in a hurried whisper. "Does he not know the beast will come?" Another shook her head, her voice shaking. Perhaps he does not fear death." The thought unsettled them more than the howl itself. Among their kind, fear was survival. To have no fear was madness, or something greater. When the forest grew silent again, the human lowered himself back to the fire. He broke a branch with his bare hands, tossing the pieces into the flames. The sound of cracking wood carried through the trees, and the alien girls leaned in closer, drawn by his every move. His body was strange to them, too solid, too sharp, every scar and muscle like a story carved into flesh. They had been raised to believe humans were weak, fragile, easy to break. Yet what they saw before them was the opposite. One of the girls finally spoke words that none of the others dared to say. Maybe the elders lied. Her voice was small, but it cut through the silence. The others turned to her in shock. To speak against the elders was dangerous, but she kept her eyes fixed on the human, her silver gaze burning with questions. They said humans were nothing, but look at him. He is something else. The human shifted suddenly, as if he heard them. His head turned, his gaze cutting toward the shadows where the girls hid. They froze, holding their breath, their bodies pressed tightly against the roots. For a heartbeat, it felt as if his eyes pierced through the trees, through the darkness, through them. None of them moved. Then he looked away, pulling the cloth tighter around his wound. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air, and the girls released their breath all at once, trembling with the weight of what had just passed. The night grew colder, but the girls could not leave. Something bound them there, stronger than fear, stronger than the warnings of their elders. It was not just his body that shocked them now. It was the way he endured. The way he sat in silence as though the whole world pressed down on him but could not break him. They had seen him bleed. They had seen him stand. And already, without knowing why, they began to feel their beliefs shifting. The stories they grew up with felt weaker than the sight before their eyes. One of them whispered into the dark, her voice full of both dread and awe. "He is not what we were told." The others said nothing, but their silence was agreement. Something had changed in them, and none of them would ever see the world the same way again. The fire had almost burned down when one of the alien girls could no longer hold back her curiosity. Her hands trembled, but her feet moved on their own, carrying her out from behind the roots. The others hissed warnings, whispering for her to stop, but she ignored them. The human sat with his back straight, his gaze lost in the flames. His wounded arm rested on his knee, blood still staining the cloth. Step by step, the girl approached him, her breath sharp in her chest. She had been told all her life that touching a human was forbidden, that their bodies carried something dangerous. Yet here she was, standing a few feet away, staring at the strange shape of his hands, the lines of his muscles. Her heart pounded as she reached out. Her fingers, pale and cold, brushed against the human's arm. She gasped the moment her skin touched his. Heat surged into her hand, unlike anything she had ever felt. His skin burned, not like fire that destroyed, but like a living flame that pulsed with strength. She pulled back with a startled cry, clutching her hand as if she had touched lightning. The sound made the human's head snap toward her. His eyes narrowed, sharp and unyielding. The other girls rushed out of hiding, surrounding their brave companion. Their voices were high with shock. "What have you done? You touched it! You touched him!" The trembling girl's voice shook as she tried to explain. He is warm. Warmer than us. His body feels alive. Too alive." Her words only added to the others' confusion. The human stood slowly, towering over them, his shadow stretching long in the dim firelight. The girls stepped back, their bodies pressed together in fear, but their eyes did not leave him. He raised his hand, not in anger, but as if to show he meant no harm. The girl who had touched him stared at his palm, at the scars etched deep into his skin. Her voice was barely a whisper. "How can someone survive such pain and still stand?" The human said nothing. His breathing was steady, his chest rising and falling in rhythm. The silence weighed heavier than words. The girls stared at him as if seeing a creature carved from stone, unbreakable yet living. Their fear began to mix with something stranger, wonder. One of the younger girls, too young to understand danger fully, reached out with trembling fingers. She touched the human's hand. This time, she did not pull away. Instead, she gasped at the steady pulse she felt beneath his skin, strong and unshakable. "It beats like thunder," she whispered. Her sister pulled her back quickly, afraid of punishment, but the words hung in the air. The fire popped, sending sparks flying upward. The human finally lowered himself back to the ground, as if their presence was not a threat. He turned away, pressing his cloth tighter against the wound, leaving them to decide whether to flee or stay. The girls, still shaken, huddled together, whispering fiercely. "Why is his body so hot? Why does it not break?" The elders said humans were fragile. Then why does he seem stronger than us? The girl who had first dared to touch him kept staring, her chest rising with a feeling she could not name. She remembered the warmth that burned her skin, a warmth so alive it scared her. In that moment, she understood why the stories had painted humans as monsters. It wasn't because they were weak. It was because their bodies carried a strength her people could never understand. The human looked at the sky again, his face glowing in the fading firelight. His silence, his scars, his very presence were enough to silence the forest around him. The alien girls stayed where they were, unable to leave, knowing they had crossed a line that could never be taken back. They had touched a human, and the shock of it would haunt them forever. The morning light spilled through the forest, painting the strange trees in pale gold. The human was already awake, gathering wood with slow, heavy movements. His face was set in silence, his body moving despite the wound on his arm. From the shadows, the alien girls still watched, none of them willing to leave after what had happened the night before. Their whispers were sharper now, filled with arguments. "The elders must be told," one of them insisted. "He is dangerous." Another shook her head. "No, if they know, he will be killed. Did you not see? He survived the fall, the wound, the beast's cry. He is not dangerous to us. He is dangerous to whatever hunts us. The tallest girl frowned, her silver eyes fixed on him. We cannot hide him forever. If he stays, he must prove what he is. The human crouched by the fire, striking stones together until sparks caught on dry leaves. The girls watched with fascination. They had seen fire only in the hands of their elders, summoned with tools of crystal. Yet here was a man who bent the world with his bare hands, forcing flames to obey. The sight unsettled them. Was it skill, or was it proof of something unnatural? One of the braver girls stepped into the clearing. Her voice was firm, though her body trembled. Human, she called, her tongue heavy around the foreign word. The others gasped, afraid of what would follow. The man lifted his head slowly, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. She pointed to a stone near her feet. Lift it. The human looked at the rock, then back at her. His expression gave nothing away. Still, he walked over, bent down, and with one hand pulled the stone from the ground. The weight of it would have taken 2 of their warriors, but he held it with ease, his muscles tightening under his torn shirt. He dropped it to the ground with a dull thud, it sending dust into the air. The alien girls stumbled back in shock, their hearts hammering. Another voice rose, more daring now. Run. She pointed to the length of the clearing. Show us. The human's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but a flicker of something alive. He dropped the cloth from his wound and began to run. His strides were long, his body moving like a machine built for survival. Even injured, he moved faster than their trained scouts. When he returned, his breath was heavy, but his posture straight. The girls whispered frantically, he should not be able to move like this with blood loss. No creature should endure such pain. The elders lied. They said humans broke easily. Their words carried both fear and wonder. One of the girls could not stop staring. Show us more, she demanded, her voice almost pleading. She stepped forward, pointing at the scar that crossed his chest. What made this? How did you live? The human looked down at the mark, his hand brushing over it as if remembering. He said nothing, but his silence spoke louder than words. He was a creature carved from suffering, yet still alive. The girls pressed closer, forming a half circle around him. Their fear had turned into something else now, a hunger to understand. The human, sensing their eyes, stood tall, his scars lit by the firelight, his wounds still bleeding, but his body refusing to fall. He looked at them as if daring them to decide what he was, a threat, a monster, or something greater than both. The tallest girl finally whispered what the others were afraid to say. Maybe this is why they fear humans. Not because they are weak, because they do not break. Her words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The human met her gaze, and in that silent exchange, a new tension formed, an unspoken challenge. The girls knew the elders would not forgive them if they discovered this secret. Yet none of them could move. They had seen with their own eyes what a human body could do, and the truth of it had shaken their world. The human sat by the river, his shirt torn away, washing the blood from his skin. The water turned red before drifting downstream, carrying pieces of his pain with it. The alien girls stood at the edge of the trees, unable to leave, their eyes locked on him. For the first time, they saw his body uncovered, and the sight left them speechless. His chest, his arms, his back, every part of him was covered in scars. Some were thin lines, some deep gashes, others marks of burns. Each one told a story of survival. One girl pressed a hand to her lips, whispering, "How can one live through so much?" Her voice trembled, not from fear but from awe. Another girl shook her head. "No one can endure that many wounds. He should have died many times." But even as she said it, she could not look away. His body was proof that death had tried and failed to take him. The human lifted his head, catching their stares. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in silent understanding. He did not hide himself. Instead, he stood, water dripping from his skin, every scar revealed under the pale light. The alien girls gasped softly, their chests tightening as though they had seen a forbidden truth. The youngest stepped forward without realizing it, her small feet carrying her closer to the riverbank. "Why? Why do you not fall?" she asked, her voice breaking. The human looked at her but said nothing. Instead, he tapped his chest once, then spread his arms as if to show he was still standing. The gesture was simple, but it struck them harder than words. The tallest girl moved beside her, her voice firm though her heart raced. Our kind faints at broken bones. We hide when fire touches us. But you wear your pain like armor. Her words silenced the group. They all felt the same, but none had dared to speak it until now. The human crouched again and tore another strip from his shirt, binding the wound on his arm tighter. His movements were slow but steady, showing a patience born from endless trials. Every scar was proof that he had faced the impossible and refused to surrender. The girls watched in silence, realizing what their elders had never told them. Humans were not weak, they were survivors. One girl whispered almost to herself, "Perhaps that is why the elders hate them, because they cannot be broken even when everything tries." The thought sent a ripple through the group. Fear of humans had been carved into them since childhood, yet what they saw now was not weakness or danger. It was strength beyond reason, and it drew them in. The human glanced at the sky, then back at them, his expression unreadable. For a heartbeat, it felt as if he was daring them to understand him, daring them to see him not as a beast but as something more. The girls stood frozen, their hearts pounding, unable to speak. The truth was written across his body in scars, and it was undeniable. One by one, their fear began to fade, replaced by something heavier, something that tied them to him: respect. They had not chosen it, but it grew inside them all the same. They would never look at their world the same way again, because once they had seen a human's body, they could never forget what it meant. The day had barely begun when the sound of cracking branches tore through the forest. The alien girls spun toward the noise, their silver eyes widening in terror. From the shadows of the trees emerged a massive beast, its body covered in black scales, its mouth dripping with venom. Its roar shook the ground, sending birds flying into the sky. The girls froze, their bodies trembling. None of them had ever faced such a creature without the elders to protect them. The human stood at the riverbank, his wounded arm still bound, his chest bare and marked with scars. He looked at the beast, then at the terrified girls. There was no hesitation. He stepped forward, placing himself between the monster and the trembling group. The girls gasped, clinging to each other. No one dared move closer. They had always been taught to run, to hide, but the beast lunged, its claws slashing the air. The human dodged, rolling across the ground and grabbing a broken branch as a weapon. He swung it with all his strength, striking the creature's jaw. The impact echoed like thunder, forcing the beast to stumble back. The alien girls screamed, their voices filled with both fear and disbelief. How could he stand against such a monster with nothing but wood in his hands? The fight was brutal. The beast's claws sliced across his side, leaving fresh blood, but he did not fall. He gritted his teeth, his body moving with raw instinct, every scar on his skin coming alive as proof of battles long past. He stabbed the sharpened branch into the beast's neck, pulling back just in time to avoid its snapping jaws. The girls covered their mouths, unable to breathe, as the human pressed forward with fearless strength. The monster roared again, knocking him to the ground. The girls cried out, thinking it was over. But the human pushed himself up, his face twisted with pain yet unbroken. He grabbed a jagged stone from the riverbank and, with a roar of his own, drove it deep into the creature's eye. The beast howled in agony, thrashing wildly before collapsing with a heavy crash that shook the earth. Silence followed. Only the human's rough breathing filled the air. He staggered to his feet, blood dripping down his chest, his arm trembling from exhaustion. The alien girls stared at him as if he were no longer a man but something beyond their understanding. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They could not. The youngest girl finally broke the silence with a trembling whisper. He fought it alone. Her words seemed unreal even as she said them. Another girl shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. No one in our clan could do that, not even the strongest of our warriors. The tallest one stepped forward slowly, her breath caught in her throat. Her voice was soft but heavy with realization. Now I know why the elders fear them. Humans do not run. They fight until the end. The human wiped the blood from his face and glanced at the girls. His expression carried no pride, only exhaustion. He turned away, sitting heavily on a rock, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. The girls edged closer, their fear slowly replaced by something else. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. His body might bleed, but it did not surrender. They looked at him not with horror now, but with reverence. For the first time, the stories of weakness and fragility felt like lies. What stood before them was proof that humans were made of something unbreakable. And deep in their hearts, they knew this moment had changed everything. The beast's corpse lay heavy on the ground, its black scales broken and its blood staining the earth. Smoke from the human's small fire drifted into the morning sky, mixing with the sharp scent of death. The alien girls slowly stepped out from their hiding place, their silver eyes fixed on the man who had done what none of their warriors would have dared. He sat on a rock, his body slumped forward, his skin marked with fresh wounds and old scars. Every breath he drew sounding rough but steady. They gathered around him cautiously, their fear gone, replaced by awe. The youngest reached him first, her small hands clutching the edge of his torn shirt. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "You should be dead," she whispered, her voice fragile. The human raised his head, his tired gaze meeting hers. He gave no reply, only a faint nod, as if he agreed, yet refused to give death the satisfaction. Another girl knelt before him, studying the bleeding cut across his side. Her fingers hovered just above it, afraid to touch, yet desperate to understand. "Why do you keep standing?" she asked, her voice trembling. The human only shrugged, as though the question had no answer. His silence was heavier than words. The tallest of them all, the one who had dared to speak first the night before, stood closest. She looked down at his scarred chest, then at the dead beast behind him. Her throat tightened as she whispered, "The elders told us humans were weak, but I see now they feared this, not weakness, endurance, strength that does not end, even when blood runs." Her words carried through the group, sinking deep into every heart. The girls bowed their heads slightly, not from fear, but from respect. Something in them had shifted. The stories of humans as fragile creatures no longer fit the man before them. He was flesh and blood, yes, but also something more, a living defiance against everything that should have killed him. The human leaned back, his chest rising with slow, steady breaths. He looked at the circle of wide-eyed faces around him, and for the first time his lips curved faintly upward. It was not a smile of triumph, but of quiet understanding. He knew they would never see him the same way again. One girl reached out, her cold fingers brushing gently against the back of his hand. This time, she did not recoil from the warmth. Instead, she held it for a moment, whispering, "Your body, it frightens us, but it also protects us." Her voice shook, but her words were true. The human let her hand linger before he pulled away and stood again, unsteady but unbroken. He walked toward the beast's corpse and placed a foot on it, his figure tall against the pale light of dawn. The alien girls followed with their eyes, like their hearts filled with something they had never felt toward another being. They did not whisper of monsters now. They whispered of guardians, of strength born from pain, of survival written into every scar. And as the human turned back toward them, his body bruised but unbowed, they understood a truth their elders had always hidden. Humans were not to be pitied or scorned. They were to be respected. The forest was quiet again, but nothing would ever be the same. The alien girls had seen a human body, and in that moment, their world changed forever.